Good afternoon, St. Louis, and welcome into City Hub right here on Sports Hub STL. Thank you for following along on YouTube. Get into the comments right now because we have some breaking news for the first time on Sports Hub STL, and it is with St. Louis City SC as they have traded midfielder Indiana Vassilev to the Philadelphia Union for general allocation money. Big news here as one of the originals from the inaugural season of St. Louis City, and obviously a big part over the last two seasons, is departing. He will be rejoining forces with the former head coach of St. Louis City SC, as Bradley Carnell is the new boss of Philadelphia Union, having taken over that post in the offseason. And so we know that Indiana Vassilev fit really well with Bradley Carnell. He fit really well with Bradley Carnell's system. There were some question marks on how he was going to fit with everything changing this year, but I think this is going to be an interesting thing because a lot of people loved Indiana Vassilev. A lot of people are going to be pretty heartbroken that one of the fan favorites in St. Louis City's uniform is going to be gone. I remember just, halfway through this past season when he got an injury, he was going to miss a start and he was going to break his consecutive start run for a little bit there. And fans were bothered right off the get that he was going to miss a start. And right out of the gate, we got Volt Blue who says, Indy, no. And yeah, there's a lot of that going on right now. I peeked over at the St. Louis City Reddit because I'm a sicko. And yeah, people are reacting very poorly to this move right now. Will Sutton got in early even before he went on live, so I got to get to his question here. Which player does the move affect the most? Perhaps Joyner makes the first team now. That's an interesting look. If you look at the depth chart right now for St. Louis City, obviously things are a little bit crowded in the attacking midfield role. Obviously, we don't really know how it's going to manifest. If you watched those preseason games, things are a little bit different. Not only are we seeing the odd man defense now with three center backs, and if you want to call them wide midfielders, if you want to call them wing backs, however you want to use your terminology, it's an odd man defense. And so we've also seen those changes affect up front, where instead of, classic out and out, maybe wingers or attacking midfielders playing wide, which is what we saw Marcel Hartel and Cedric Teuscher doing last year, as well as Celio Pompeu before his injury, Rasmus Alm when he came back and before he got injured for that matter. Those guys have now pushed inside and are playing deeper. And so there's a lot of questions about whether or not, how those players are going to work. I personally think that Indiana would have really worked in this new system, but at the same time, we have to get down to the facts of this, which is this isn't completely about system. And I'll answer Will's question in a minute, but I have to get to the larger fact of this, which is just surprising everyone, which was this addition to the discussion right off the bat. And that was when Taylor Twellman tweeted this: Vassilev made it known to his teammates at St. Louis City SC that he didn't want to be there anymore. So good business by the club to find the right deal. And of course, this deal originally reported by Tom Bogert over at Give Me Sport, who originally agreed the deal was in principle. Tom Timmerman over at St. Louis Post-Dispatch, he put out his article talking about the deal, and in there he confirmed that a team source has confirmed to him that the deal is finalized. As we get more intricacies about the general allocation money and those kind of things, we'll make sure to give those to you guys. Make sure you're following Sports Hub STL on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to keep up with all that information. But Will Sutton's question again, which player does this affect? I think Joyner is likely. Caden Glover, those kind of guys, the young forwards, the guys who you would think, who are the natural backups, who are the guys who have a similar skill set to Marcel Hartel, Cedric Teuscher, Thomas Ostrak, those kind of guys. And I think Mekhi Joyner, he's more of a striker in my opinion. You saw him obviously score like a striker in MLS Next Pro last season, but I think Joyner could be a guy who gets time to open up. I think this is more, when you look at the Taylor Twellman tweet, I think this is more a guy who saw that a lot of his playing time wasn't going to be there. In fact, when we talk about, his contributions to this team over the years and that playing time and how it's going to be affected, let's just look at the numbers here for Indiana Vassilev. And I mean, you can see it right there. I mean, over 2,000 minutes in that inaugural season for St. Louis City across 34 matches played, 25 starts. This past season, it went down a little bit, but so did the match time. 1,800 minutes across 29 matches and 23 starts. His numbers actually were better if you look at both the gross goals and assist numbers. Was 6 total last year. His expected goals and assists total was just under 5. This year it was 7, and his expected goals and assists was just over 7. So he actually had a better season statistically this past year. But again, with the firing of Bradley Carnell, bringing in Olaf Melberg, completely changing of the system, a lot of these things are going to change. Nathan Simpson, for a casual soccer fan, explain this move in NBA, NFL, MLB, or NHL terms, please. Pretty simple. A team makes a trade or an acquisition for a big-time player at a spot where you already have some guys who have been starters and role players over the last 2 or 3 years, and they say, listen, there's not really going to be a space for me, and I'm 24, I'm on the up. I don't want to just be a bench player right now. There's a spot for me in this league somewhere where I can be a starter. And that we've seen that a lot in a lot of sports. So I think that's where that kind of, carries over. Back to Volt Blue, he says, Indy is probably relatively better than Sunny. I'm trying to think that was the comparison he's making to an AHL move there. Let's get into some more of these texts. Will Sutton, great landing spot. He will appear in every game. He's healthy. Yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, his relationship with Bradley Carnell, his fit in that high pressing system, that was fantastic. And that's why I think there's some people out there who don't think Indiana Vassilev was going to fit in Olaf Melberg's system. I disagree with that. I think that if you look at his numbers, Indiana Vassilev was more efficient in the middle third than he was in the attacking third. And he was better as a central player than he was out wide at times. And so I think this system with Melberg, which was going to, again, push him back and inside naturally with the other players at that position, I think this would have made a lot of sense for him. And again, the pressing's not going anywhere. I know Lutz called it 2.0, but I broke it down on Sports Hub STL in one of my breakdowns of the new system. 2.0 doesn't mean that the pressing is going to go anywhere. It means a more stable defense behind that pressing, but that pressing system's still going to be here. And so it's still going to be key for guys to, at all 10 positions in the outfield, to be pressing all over the place. And so you're going to lose that with Indiana Vassilev. And in fact, let's take a look at, kind of his breakdown. This is from FB Charts and FB Ref. And you can kind of see some of the numbers there. He's not a great offensive player. The blue, by the way, is 2023. The red, orange is 2024. So he increased, obviously, as an offensive player in 2024, but you really see the biggest parts about his game are the defensive aspects of his game. And that's, again, when you talk about a pressing midfielder and what he can bring to Carnell's system in Philadelphia, that's where he's going to make his biggest impact. But you bet the bigger stats, he had a fine season last year when City was really struggling to get impact from anybody, and that was in less minutes. And so I really thought he was going to have a solid role-playing season for St. Louis City this year. At the same time, his contract expires at the end of this season, and you just got some general allocation money for him. So making a move on a player who was going to be a role player, maybe even a backup, depending on how certain players develop, who's on an expiring deal, that makes sense. There are, again, an improving player who's 24, who's been with you since the inauguration of your franchise. Those parts of the deal aren't great, and I understand why fans are going to be mad, but this is a solid deal. This kind of gets to the deals we've seen from Lutz. And I know some people are saying if they make this deal, fire Lutz, because that's how emotional fans are going to get. But people were saying that same thing with the Tim Parker deal midseason last year. And I can't find a lot of people right now who would go back in time and undo the Tim Parker for Henry Kessler deal. Lutz is a very good sporting manager in this way. And when contracts are a factor in how you're going to deal with guys in the future, you got to make the move. And I think that's smart. Will Sutton says his stats are pretty underwhelming for an attacking player, but do appreciate they can play almost any position besides center back. And that's one thing, when I throw up that other graph that I have from FB Ref, it is important to say that these are his stats relative to other attacking midfielders. I think he's better as a central midfielder. That's kind of been my entire point about how he's going to fit into Olaf Melberg's system. So I agree with you, Will, to a point. I do think these numbers are a little bit hard to quantify because I think he's better a midfielder. When you do look at these stats in the context of other MLS midfielders from those seasons, they do look a little bit better. But overall, I mean, Indy has great XG numbers. We saw that when you look at these numbers here. He has great XG numbers, but a lot of his other numbers just don't jump off the page. And that's kind of why I think he's a role player. But again, effort, pressing, defense, those kind of things, when you get them from a player outside of the defense, that's what makes schemes like what Carnell ran and what City's partially going to run. That's going to make it really work. And Will Sutton, another great point here when I was talking about the other things that factor into this and make it maybe a harder pill to swallow for some City fans, not to mention his locker room presence. And I was getting to that point right off the bat, and I think that needs to be focused on, because it wasn't just that St. Louis City fans loved Indiana Vassilev and are obsessed with Indiana Vassilev. It's the fact that the team really seemed to have a great idea of him. And I was listening to some tweets after this news came, because I was trying to, see if I could suss out maybe what that Taylor Twellman tweet was about. And I came across Jen Cease over at Camo X on the City Spotlight, who does a great job. And she had a short little interview with João Klaus, and she asked him about Indiana Vassilev and him returning from his time with the United States men's national team. This was back at the beginning of February when he was returning and missed the beginning of the preseason. And here's what Klaus had to say. We are so happy for him. I think Indy is a guy that's a big voice on the team. He's very loud. He's a great guy, and everyone is so happy for him to have his first game with the national team. And I think that's all genuine from João Klaus. And so it's a great point by Will. He is a huge locker room presence. He's a fan favorite. And so the optics of this deal are going to be hard to swallow in a lot of ways. Jeremy Clements, always great talking City, comes into the chat. Coming off a call up to the United States men's national team, he's going to want to be in a preferred position. Great point. And it's a contract year, so he's playing for that, and a bench role in St. Louis wasn't going to help those causes. That's exactly a great point. Again, 24 years old, up-and-coming player, contract year, all of those are huge factors as to why, again, we get back to the Taylor Twellman tweet, and I'll throw that one back up for everybody here so they have the context again, and let's get rid of that. There's the Taylor Twellman tweet again. Vassilev made it known to his teammates that he didn't want to be there anymore, so good business by the club to find the right deal. And everything Jeremy just laid out is a perfect example as to why he wouldn't want to be in St. Louis anymore, because he wants to be in a preferred position. He just got that call up. He's feeling the fact that he can now build on his career. Why would he take a role spot when, again, he might not be a starter on this team, but everything you've seen from Indiana Vassilev, maybe not statistically, but if you watch the games, everything you've seen from Indiana Vassilev over the last 2 years tells you that he's a starter on an MLS team. Eddie Lawrence joins us on the chat. And if you are in the chat on YouTube, you have questions, you have comments, or again, if you're one of the people I saw earlier on Reddit and you have reactions, go ahead and do it. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel right now. Always like and subscribe. Always helps us out here. And again, follow us all over socials at Sports Hub STL. Eddie Lawrence here on the chat. What are we going to do with this general allocation money? If we go out and get center midi depth, I don't mind it. One thing there is the trialist, Alfredo Morales. We have not heard any news. City will have a media availability tomorrow morning after their early morning practice. So maybe we'll be tweeting something from our socials just a little bit afternoon about something with Morales or an update on him. I agree with you that center midi depth is probably the biggest question right now. It's been accentuated because Chris Durkin has the knee problems. By the way, if you want to dive in some more City stuff, today I dropped an article talking about Chris Durkin and the question marks we have around him and how he'll fit into Olaf Melberg's new system, considering we didn't get to see him in the preseason because of those knee injuries that he's dealing with right now. But no Chris Durkin in the preseason, not a lot of JGR. You still have Akil Watts, who played very well in the preseason. You have a solid two-man group at the 6 or at the 8, with Leuven and Ostrak. So I see why people want the center midi depth, but if they wrap it up with Morales, they're kind of set on center infield. I think, there's not a lot of spaces right now. Maybe left back is another one, because Conrad Wallem looked really good over on the left flank playing in the odd man defense. But if you look at Conrad Wallem's game overall, he can pretty much play wherever he wants to. And so they don't have a lot of depth out on the left side right now. Jay Reed is coming back from an injury, and we don't really know what he's going to look like or how he's going to fold into a new team and a new system. Although, again, speaking of things I put out on Sports Hub STL coming up tomorrow, I'll just ruin the surprise tomorrow. I'm doing a breakdown of how the new fullbacks will factor into Melberg's system. Jay Reed seems like he's going to be a fantastic player in Melberg's system, but we just don't know. And so left back could be another spot because, again, right now, other than Wallem and an injured Jay Reed, they don't really have somebody who can play higher up the left side in the odd man defense. If they go back to a 4-man defense, Hebert, Horn, those guys seem like they can give you 90 minutes at left back fine. But right now, that's where they are a little bit thin overall. So There it is. St. Louis City SC trades Indiana Vassilev to Philadelphia Union for general allocation money. Again, credit to Tom Bogert, who originally had the story over on Give Me Sport. And credit again to STL Today and the STL Post Dispatches, Tom Timmerman. He's the man in the hat. If you ever watch the post-game press conferences or watch anything City related, he's the guy in the hat. He's fantastic. And he did a good job confirming his the source from St. Louis City that this deal that Tom Bogert originally reported has been finalized. Indiana Vassilev, one of the inaugural players from that original run from St. Louis SC, has been moved to the Philadelphia Union. That'll wrap up our instant reaction right here on Sports Hub STL. Again, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Like this video, please. Subscribe to all our socials across Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or X, the everything app, if you want to call it that, or you can also go to Instagram and follow us there. You can sign up for our newsletter. If you go to sportshubstl.com, that's the website I keep talking about where you can find city coverage. Heck, you can find coverage for the Cardinals, the Blues, betting and gambling and fantasy kind of stuff, Billikens, City, all that stuff right there on Sports Hub STL. And right when you log on at the very beginning of that homepage, you can sign up for our newsletter. First one will be coming out Monday with all kinds of stuff, including things like this when we break down something live as it's happening with the news today. This has been the first little bit of City Hub. We'll have plenty, including the post-game show on Saturday, as St. Louis City will be kicking off the season with a match against the Colorado Rapids from Energizer Park down on Saturday evening. And right here after the game, probably around 9:30, maybe a little bit later, we will be having your post-game show. In fact, that'll be one of 5 post-game shows that will be going live that day. We'll have Cardinals, Billikens, Blues, Mizzou basketball, and then City, all right here on Sports Hub STL. Thank you so much for joining us today. We got a couple last-second comments here before we completely get rid of this one. Jay Reed is going to feast at left wing back when healthy. Wonder where Wallum falls after. That's from Will Sutton. Again, I think Wallum falls wherever you have a spot for him, and I really think that opens up some different formational things that they could do, because we've seen 2 main formations right now from them, pretty similar, just kind of changing the where people are, how deep they are, who's sitting on the striker's shoulder, if there's 2 strikers or 1 striker. Those kind of things have been the main changes we've seen under Mellberg. If you free up Wallum, who, again, if you look at his numbers, has played left, right, center, attack, midfield, wing, whatever, what have you, it really opens things up once Jay Reed gets back. And I agree with Will. He's absolutely going to feast. Ryan Bowman, good for Indy. I'll root for him other than March 22nd. Yeah, he's locking it in there. St. Louis City travels to face off against former boss Bradley Carnell on March 22nd. That is an away game, so unfortunately, City fans are going to have to wait to see the return of Indiana Vassilev. Will Sutton chiming in again. Feels like Wallum is underutilized at left wing back. Well, maybe you're getting caught up in the terminology too much, and we all make this mistake. If you are watching the tape of the preseason games, Wallum is playing extremely high up. And I would say, this is why I call it an odd man defense, because it trips people up when you say, is it a back 5 or is it a back 3? Well, in the flow of a game, it's both. But if you want to talk about the base, I would say that right now, City is running a back 3 with more like midfielders than wingbacks. And Wallum was playing a very attacking version of midfield or wingback throughout those 3 preseason games. And very interestingly, it was the interplay with him and Hartel, where when Hartel dropped deep in midfield to kind of cover with Leuven, Wallum then would use that to get really high up. Or if Horn would come from that wide center back position and come out to the left flank, well, Wallum would then take that advantage to be like, okay, well, if he's going to be a left back position, now I'm going to move from a left midi position to a left winger position. So I really don't think that Wallum is underutilized at that position in this system. But again, that's the issue sometimes with soccer terminology and how those things kind of work out. Eddie Lorenz, this will be our last one here. I like Wallum at right wing back as well. So we just get deeper when Jay is healthy. I love it as well. Again, all across the field at all depths, Conrad Wallum has shown what he can do, and I'm excited to see him. He's kind of fallen in the back as we've been covering and talking about a lot of the players from the last two years and how are they going to adapt to a new coach. But again, Conrad Wallum is also adapting to a new coach. He's also adapting to a new system. We just don't have, to 4,000 minutes like with Indiana Vassilev to wonder, well, what does it look like now? And so it's a little bit different. Again, this has been City Hub on Sports Hub STL. Hit the like button, hit the follow button all over socials, and follow us next time news is breaking. Anytime news is breaking in St. Louis sports, Sports Hub STL is going to be there. Have a great day.